Hello. Hello and welcome to another Girl by Moonlight design stream. Just let me get everything positioned. Alright. Today, I'm working on the Fusion. The Fusion being the last playbook that I'm trying to get done for my playtest package. One that is like 100% inspired by Garnet from Steven Universe. And my hope today is to finish this and then do a little bit of touch up on some of the other playbooks. Take a break, come back, and work on the actual rules of the game themselves. So I have my little text document where I'm actually codifying all the rules in terms of what has changed from Blades, and then I've got some notes in my little notebook today that I need to essentially transfer into my digital document, which is kind of my like master rules file. I hope everyone's actually seeing this. Because my video preview isn't working. But, okay, good. Good, things are actually working. Okay. So, the Fusion is a character who is like a composite character. So it's going to be played by one player and function as one kind of character, but the Fusion is composed of multiple people who have a special kind of relationship together where they are in some way melded into a single unit. So some concepts that I've talked about in the past is stuff like, playing it straight up, like being someone who's like Garnet, where your two individuals need fuse and become like this other person. I've also talked about doing tightly paired but still separate people, so like twins who are always together, or like a parent and child combo or something like that. Could even be like a person and a pet or collection of pets with whom they have this like symbiotic function. I'm definitely down to have people kind of stretch the format a little bit. But then the idea with this one is that this is the playbook that then can stretch that out to the other characters and try to glom them into itself. And I'm really not sure how that would work. So I've got to figure that out today. So the moves for the Fusion are quite daunting. And I'm really not sure how to carry out. I think it's going to have a lot to do with like Transcendence being where a lot of the like crazy bendy shit happens, and that outside of that they're just going to have a lot of moves that are like their core moves are going to be very empathy and relationship oriented. Also, yeah, so first things first, I have a pretty clear decision on what their stats should be. I think they've got to be embody, empathize. It just makes too much sense. Empathize because they are a character built out of relationships, and then embody because like the whole Fusion thing is potentially a very physical thing, a physical combination of people into a single unit. You know, that they are an embodiment of a relationship, right? So, core moves, I'm thinking, are going to be mostly about interpersonal stuff, and similarly for their gather information. I want them to be about like reaching out to the other characters, supporting them, and then when we get into the transcendence moves, so when they actually like transform into their like magical girl thing, then I want those moves to be about combining with people, like doing the whole like Voltron thing that you get in Steven Universe, stuff like that. So, and I want to do that in a way where it doesn't take over. Because if it's like every time we fight, we all just kind of tack ourselves onto the fusion and turn into a giant thing, and that's like how we accomplish every task. That's obviously not very interesting. I mean, or maybe it is. Maybe that's like totally cool. I mean, I suppose you could take it in the like Power Rangers direction where like every time you fight something there's a kind of second act to the combat where it becomes huge and then you have to fuse and becomes this huge thing. People could play it that way if they wanted to, and the fusion would give you a like means within the mechanics of doing that, presumably. I think we might have some stuff like when you transcend, your scale increases. So we could have some moves like this where we get like increased effect when we transcend because we're like even more so because we're this like giant woman. And this move's name would obviously have to be giant woman. I like what some people are suggesting about like group action related stuff. I'm not sure what benefit to give with group action though. Like, we could do something like the Shadows move, like when you are involved in a what's the wording on that move? It's like sixes. I know that the mechanics of it are that sixes from multiple people would form a critical, but like I want to just get the wording right. That's under Shadows, right? Yeah, so here we go. It's called Synchronized. When you perform a group action, you may count multiple sixes from different rolls as a critical success. Okay, so we want to take that language. So when you are involved in a group action, which I think we need to change that wording in this case because it is not a crew move, now it's an individual move. You may count multiple sixes from different rolls as a critical success. We're just going to directly take that wording so that we can be consistent with the core game of Blades. And I want to give this another, like a further bonus, because as it stands right now, it's decent, but it's not amazing. I mean, I guess like this is the move from Blades, so it's probably, this is ostensibly strong enough, you know, assuming that we think Blades is well balanced. I'm kind of just looking right now at any Blades moves that make sense in some form for this this playbook. So I don't see any of these as being sensible. Yeah, nothing wrong with the spider is jumping out at me. No, none of these. We could maybe give them something like Rook's Gambit. Maybe tying it to special armor instead of making it a push yourself thing. Yeah, I think there's room for this to come in there. I think either this playbook or the Outsider, no, the Stranger rather, could have that. And that would make sense. Just any action roll. Right, something like that. Do these guys get special armor? Yeah, they have subterfuge to resist a consequence from suspicion or persuasion or push yourself. Yeah. But yeah, the Rook's Gambit could maybe fit. Yo, the new version of Infiltrator is huge. I hadn't seen this update. That's crazy. So it's just like, you just sneak into stuff flawlessly, regardless of how intense it is. That's super strong. Oh, here we go. Here's what we can do. So this expertise move is a great like group action thing. So we can, I like the idea of just combining this. So when you lead a group action using, we'll just say any action. I'm down to just like open this way up. You can suffer only one stress at most, regardless of the number of failed rolls. I mean, that's really strong. So maybe we make it that you can never suffer at most 2 stress from people failing rolls. Although if we say that and we assume, so here's the numbers game aspect, right? So say we have 4 players in the game. Um, 4 players in the game. I'm one of them as the fusion. We're doing a group action. If we limit it to, so we can take at most 3. And the odds are that one of these people is going to succeed, even if they're only rolling 1 die, right? Like 50-50 chance that someone succeeds. So the number of circumstances in which we take 3 stress is very low. The most common result is probably, mathematically it's probably like 1.5 stress is the expected result. So in that case, saying we take at most 2 means we're only eliminating those situations in which we take 3, which are very rare. If we take at most 1, we're saving ourselves, 0.5 stress, theoretically. Assuming everyone's involved. And that's the other thing, right? Like your group action might only involve 2 people, in which case you're only expected to take at most 1 stress anyways. And yeah, we could, as Sith Master suggests, make it by category, balance it by category rather than 1 skill. Because 1 skill feels very narrow, for this game anyways. Take at most 1 stress from others failing. You take at most 1 stress from others failing. Is that the wording here? You can suffer only 1 stress at most, regardless of the number of failed rolls. Okay. At most 1 stress, regardless of when leading. Take at most 1 stress, regardless of the number of failed rolls during a group action. This is fine. Given the stress economy in the game, I think this is actually just fair and balanced. In Girl by Moonlight. It would be ridiculous in Blades, but yeah, I'm happy with this because generally characters expect to have less stress to work with per score in Girl by Moonlight. Kind of, and so yeah, this is reasonable, I think. Because if you think about it, every session or every mission, right, in the downtime which happens before, you're going to roll obligation, which is like a resist roll, basically. So odds are pretty good that you'll take some stress to start. And like, in terms of probabilities, most characters are going to have like at best 1 die, at least for most of the early game, and really just in general, I think they're probably going to, the numbers are going to stay pretty low. So if I'm rolling a 1 die resist roll, my average result, is probably that I'm going to be at like 2 or 3 stress to start, which means that on any given score, I really only have 6 to work with. And there's no way to remove that stress other than like critting rolls, shit like that. So, whereas in Blades, right, we can we can expect to be. I mean, it's kind of similar. I would expect players to have between 1 and 3 stress going into a score generally, but there are better ways to be at 0. It's much more likely to happen. The costs are a little different, but to get it is more feasible. Whereas in Girl by Moonlight, because of how it's structured, you kind of expect some of these boxes to be filled right out the gate. Meaning you can only really rely on having, like worst case scenario, if you roll a 1, right, you take 5, you're going to come in with 5 stress already filled, so you have 4 to work with. And we do need to balance around that. So I think having a move like this, where we just across the board take at most 1 stress when leading group actions, it's fine. Whereas in Blades, right, we would expect to enter scores with less stress, because players are more likely to overindulge and suffer entanglements than, I feel like, than not, and be stuck on like 3 or 4 or 5. Certainly if someone is at 5 stress, they're very likely to indulge and pin that down. I would expect like the most stress people would float at is like 3, maybe 4. Whereas in Girl by Moonlight, you're very likely to be pushed there. It's like not even a matter of playstyle or preference. So, long-winded way of saying, I think it's important that I give people more ways of avoiding stress, because they're going to be pushed to the limit a lot more. That's also why I changed how being at max stress functions. Is part of balancing that out. Because there is no way of getting rid of stress in Girl by Moonlight except finishing missions. So like you have to go do a score essentially, and then you clear all your stress. And then roll obligation, which is going to give you some amount of stress. And yeah, I've been thinking about like who would have a role for better mitigating obligation. And I think it actually would live in the Stranger, because you're such a weirdo, like emotionless robot person. All that to say, I love emotionless robot people. But yeah, because this character is meant to be so like aloof and distant, I feel like they would have the best. It makes the most sense for them to be best at dealing with all of the like worldly stuff, because they're so emotionally disconnected. The Fusion, I think, could never be better at dealing with obligation, because they are the most they're like the most queer playbook. They are the most transgressive. So I don't think it makes sense to give them like good obligation related stuff or ways to mitigate society's pressure in that way. And yeah, the complete opposite end of the spectrum in terms of the Stranger, right? This character is the most relationshipy, the most good at interperson connection, right? So that is my stance against a sort of functioning vice equivalent for this playbook. I think it belongs elsewhere, either in the Stranger or the Outsider. I think there's an argument for the Outsider doing it because of this aspect, right? The idea that you used to be among the baddies. It might mean that you're like better able to deal with their bullshit because you've seen it all before. But most relevantly, I think, is the stranger having it. Anyways, let's get back to the matter at hand. Thinking about special armor for this playbook. So this is kind of... Oh, someone's got a fully fleshed out move suggestion I need to read. Yeah, something where they like take additional stress because maybe when separate. I think having a move. So there's going to be like a non-optional thing about how like fusion non-optional move about being a combiney person. So we're gonna give them a like default thing. And then Zoe Claire had some interesting comments about stress that I want to check out here. So I'm wondering about the clearing stress bit. If you clear the stress at the end of the score, then you can't max out between scores. That inherently means you can only eclipse during a score, which might be fine. It's just interesting to consider how the game might function if you could eclipse at different phases. So, yeah, basically how I'm imagining it, right, is that like you can eclipse during a score, you can stay eclipsed, or well, sorry, you can... So eclipse, to clarify, eclipse is when you are at 9 stress. You are in eclipse. And then you like hover at the edge, and then you fall to darkness. Once you have fallen to darkness, then you stay that way. Because if you cleared stress while you've fallen to darkness between episodes, that would kill your character. So once you've gone all edgelord, you're stuck there, and things function differently. And there's no easy out for it. If you manage to hang on to the edge and be in eclipse when the score ends, we might make a special rule for that. I think there's room for like if you end a mission in eclipse, there's something special that happens where like a loud truck passes by and deafens you. I think there's room for that resulting in you like getting a like a -1 to your obligation roll, or something where you like start the next mission with more stress, so it carries forward in a problematic way. That could definitely spiral people, though, is the thing, because there are so few tools for dealing with it. So I'm also looking at ways of expanding the free play section of Blades, so that in between missions, although you only have 2 downtime actions, you can spend more time like just kind of doing whatever in free play, and that will have its own kind of pressure that it's putting on you, and that might be a place where you like take more stress and can deal with other issues. So I have a lot of uncertainty about how the stress economy is going to play out, because it's I'm changing it in some pretty big ways. So I think it's something that I'm going to need to review after playtesting. I have some ideas, but they're totally unproven, so it's really difficult to say like, is this good or bad? Yeah, Fargonautic, I'm not sure that I 100% understand where you're going with your question or comment. Um, and yeah, Red Troubadour, one exit state per playbook for being in darkness. There's like the one way that you get out of it. Um, and I mostly want that to happen post mission in terms of getting people out. I don't think that's going to happen like in the action. Um, and most of them are worded such that it would be difficult for that to be the case. Um, Certainly, you can try to get people out of darkness, but I think there's a great deal of risk that comes along with that. Um, because it means you have to like, I guess doing it in downtime, you spend a downtime action to do it. Doing it in free play might be a way that we could do it, in which case you run the risk of like taking stress or other consequences. And doing it in doing it during the mission, you would be most likely to suffer more severe consequences while trying to pull someone out of darkness. So yeah, getting people out of their darkest self is definitely a like downtimey kind of thing as far as my current visioning of it. Um, Whether or not that will survive to the final version of the game, is an open question, but that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. Okay, so Fargonautic, you're talking about like some kind of move that is about having a relationship essentially with a companion of some kind, be it a person, animal, whatever. Um, that's kind of what I'm thinking in terms of this like non-optional core move for the playbook. One that kind of defines their state as being that relationship. Yeah, so currently Matthias Belger obligation is just like the game heaping a spoonful of stress on you at the start of every downtime phase. Um, Whereas initially I had planned to have it be more of a like the initial concept I was like, yeah, you're gonna like play out this phase. Um, but I think very quickly I came to a conclusion where I was like, this is the least interesting part of the game, and it makes more sense to elide it. And so we have the obligation roll where we can say like, you know, we make this roll that lets you know how well you've weathered it, whether or not we want to go into detail of what that looks like or why. Um, like how deeply you want to dive into that is up to up to the table. Um, the let me pull it up in my text document because I've got an actual obligation. So, at the start of every downtime, each character must roll obligation. We describe the circumstances of the crew's shared obligation and some difficulties they are facing there. Make a resistance roll with your lowest attribute, taking stress equal to 6 minus the die result. On a crit, clear 1 stress. See, so this part I actually need to change. Because we're not carrying stress forward in the current iteration of the game. So on a crit, something special. For any result, we narrate what this means for the characters. Right? Like if you... So we establish... Right? So everyone has to do it. We describe the circumstances of the crew's shared obligations. So like say it's the classic like high school. We might be like, oh yeah, it's like midterms right now. You have some like general context, like what time of year it is, what kind of stuff is going on in school, um, and some difficulties that you're facing there. So like, there's still that bully from last time. Yeah, they're still around. Blah blah blah. Right? We establish some of what might go wrong, and then we roll the dice, and we say, cool. Okay, so like, you know, Chie aced the roll, but Naota didn't. Naota got like a Naota rolled a 1, so they get 5 stress, and then you're like, okay, well, what? Why are things particularly bad for Naota? Why is Chie like chill? How is everyone navigating this stuff? And then we roll out of that into downtime, so it could be that we like address some of the consequences of that stuff. Um, yeah, I like being like a free downtime action for now. I think that's good. I think that's a great suggestion, Hyena. And so yeah, obligation is, like Sith Master says, is great fodder for montage. You just montage it. We get to see some little snippets, some slice of life stuff, um, and then we move on to the stuff that's really interesting, which is the downtime phase, etc. So like, if we look at my kind of main inspiration for that whole like obligation downtime mission structure, it wasn't Blades initially. It was actually Persona 4, and the like classroom scenes from Persona are a great example of like an obligation phase, right? Everyone has to go to school. You play it out very quickly. It's not like we have the whole school day go by. There's like a little mini game basically that you play, and then you move on, right, to the stuff that's actually interesting, which is when the characters have their own time. But it's a way of showing that the characters have spent a bunch of their time doing this thing that they aren't in control of, and that they get this very narrow slice of time to actually have to themselves. Um, so, and then Systemaster, you're saying you might need to specify how stress is cleared when you are your darkest self. So, here's the thing. It's not. You don't go back to full. If you are in darkness, you just keep rolling through. And I think even if you go into the obligation phase in darkness with 5 or less stress remaining, and so when you're in darkness, your stress count is a countdown. Like, your obligation could kill your character. I'm fully into this playstyle. I think it is hilarious. Um, so yeah, it obligation is very deadly to characters in darkness, I think. And so yeah, it's like you're so fucked up and like so on the edge that like yeah, going to school the next day might be what drives you completely off the deep end, right? And when your character like bottoms out in when in darkness, you don't like die, although that is one of the options. You can die, retire, become a baddie, all that stuff. But you're the only option in which you can continue being a magical girl is if you become a baddie. All the other options, you're out the game. Um, and so essentially, like death versus retirement versus whatever else, that's all just flavor. The character is over. So, um, and I think I'm keen on that staying in the game as like an aesthetic thing because yeah, like the obligation, it's scary and you can't run away from it, right? yeah, so you don't just like clear all your stress and die when you're in darkness. And that's actually, I'm gonna just note that in my little thing here, because so while you are in darkness, play into your darkness prompt. Instead of accumulating stress, you begin erasing it from your sheet. When your stress reaches 0, your character comes completely to darkness. You can choose to either have your character die, disappear, retire from the action, or they become a champion of the darkness with the MC pulling the strings. Make a new character. They join the crew after the current mission ends. While in darkness, you do not clear stress. The end of the mission. You roll obligation as normal. Yeah, so it's like super perilous to be in darkness. And it might be that you like push through and beat the thing, but that it will cost you severely. Rising Cosmos, the playtest on Monday is 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central Time, which is like Elf's time on her channel. Yeah, so like you roll obligation as normal, I think covers this whole idea of like you take the stress. And yeah, Exermin, you don't save yourself. Other people save you. So, for example, let's go to the Guardian playbook. They have the simplest one. So your darkness prompt is, all the people you have sworn to protect are unworthy of that protection. You belong at the front, leading the fight. Wherever foes exist, you seek them out and confront them directly right now. You can only escape the darkness when someone shows you how you are vulnerable and loves you despite your own weakness. So someone else has to come in and bail you out, basically. That's how you get out of darkness. So in this example, say we succumb to darkness during the mission, which would involve us being at so we've filled out all of our stress. Boop, 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 boop. We're in Eclipse. At this point, every time we take stress, we roll our lowest resist, which in this case, on the default character sheet is 0. So you'd roll 2d6, take the lowest. On a 6, you're still in it. You like maintain. On a crit, some fancy shit happens. On a 4-5, someone else can push themselves to keep you from bailing, from falling. But then on a 1-3, you're in darkness. You have to start playing into this prompt. Every time you take stress, you then erase it. So say I push myself. Whoops. Why am I not in the eraser? There we go. I push myself. I resist some consequence, and I have to suffer 3 stress. So I'm coming into obligation with 4 stress now, let's say, because we win the mission. We complete the mission. Everyone else would go to 0 stress as normal. I don't, because that would kill me. Instead, I just carry this forward. I roll obligation. If I get a 1 or a 2, I fucking rip. If I get a 3, 4, or 5, 6, I can stay in the game. I would just, mark stress as normal. During downtime, we would have an opportunity to do this. We might have opportunities to do this elsewhere, but it's probably higher risk. That kind of thing. So there are ways that you could die in between missions. Certainly, it is possible. But it's the kind of thing where the player will know that that's what they're getting into, right? Because you're in control of when you take stress, ultimately. So I'm fine with that being how it plays out. And then when you so this is something that's in my notes in my notebook here. I'm pretty sure I have it now that when you so when the trigger occurs, you go back to normal, reset stress to 0. And then I have some early ideas for what happens when you crit the Eclipse roll, which is the one where you're sitting at 9 stress. Every time you take stress, you have to roll. I kind of want it to feel similar to characters triggering Virtue in Darkest Dungeon. And so I think it's probably going to be something like you erase a certain amount of stress, and then, whether or not you, like... So this is just occurring to me now, but what might be interesting is to say, like, you roll your best resistance, and then... you roll a resistance of your choice. You heal an amount of stress equal to the result of your roll, and then gain some effect happens based on what resistance you rolled. So if you roll Moe, a certain thing happens. If you roll Tsundere, a certain thing happens. If you roll Kudere, a certain thing happens. And so, like as an example for Moe, it might be like everyone else heals like half of the stress that you rolled, that you healed, or something like that. And then maybe Tsundere would have like an action-y one where like everyone gets like a +1 to their next roll or something. And then Kudere could have some kind of insightful thing. So that's some stuff I'm floating around. We're going to get to that in the second part of today's design stream, because this one's going to be long. It's probably going to be doing this for like 3 hours or something. So for now, I just want to focus on getting this playbook sorted out. So we have gotten very sidetracked from the initial goal of designing some action-y playbook moves for the fusion. So I want to look at special armor for this character. I just need to check something. Where is this? Where is this file I'm looking for? I think it's this one. I think it's the really old one. Yeah, so I have some... had some special armor thoughts here. Yeah, so you have special armor against consequences that would impact your relationship with others or within yourself. This part I'm into. Like, you can prevent people from like driving a wedge between you and the other characters, or any consequence that's kind of directed in that way. And then we have this idea that you can spend your special armor to use any action. To use your highest action in place of a given one. So you have special armor against any consequence with others or within yourself. You may spend your special armor to use your highest action. What is the wording on Rook's Gambit? Roll your best action rating while performing a different action. Yeah. To roll your best action rating while performing a different action. Cool. And then we want to change the color on this, right? So say how you... So we're going to talk about how we are able to do this. So why do we think that the fusion should have this Rook's Gambit thing? I think it's about something about like a detail of the people that make up the fusion. So describe how your nature permits I think I want to phrase this as a question. I'll just say, what aspect of your nature allows for this adaptation? Right, so it's like, what is it about the, like, how is it that this character is flexible enough, like, that they can do this, is what we want an answer for. Because maybe it's like we are fused Garnet style and we, like, split temporarily to, like, do this thing. Yeah, I think like 90% of my playtest population will have watched at least one of these streams. Right, because with the move we're basing this on from the slide, Rook's Gambit, it's like you're a very MacGyver-y kind of character, right? And it's about action and skillfulness, and about being kind of having this like roguish thing where you just kind of make do on the fly. Whereas for our move, it's about like the very nature of the character being adaptable and changeable. So I think this sums up what I'm trying to say, but it's very hand wavy. Yeah, and so my hope is that people will bring other folks in to playtest who have not seen these things. But there will then also be one person who kind of can bridge the gap between what I have been saying that I've been trying to make and then how it plays at the table, and so that your notes might reflect that. I think that would be interesting to see. and that hopefully y'all who are watching are going to be the ones taking notes, right? And giving me those notes and feedback, or sending me recordings of your play. Okay, so we got a few more abilities to throw in here, and we haven't fleshed out this one, but I think that's okay. I want to move on to some of the other aspects first and then circle back, because usually these will inform some of the other stuff very nicely. So things that remain to be done as well are XP triggers. The XP triggers generally relate to what our two starting stats are, which in this case are Embody and Empathize. And then we have our Gather Information questions and our Darkness. The Darkness is obviously for this character going to be a like fracturing. There's a really great example of it in Steven Universe, as like one that is forced, and then another that is a little bit different. So yeah, I could see like there are actually like 3 separate instances of weird fusion stuff that we could use as Darkness from Steven Universe. There's the one where Garnet gets split, where it's like a very sad thing, but there are like circumstances pushing them apart. There's the one where God, what's her name? I feel terrible. But Steven and what's her name fuse, the human girl. And like there's all this like weirdness about like there's kind of like a dysphoric, like a body dysphoria thing that goes on, or like a losing of self. Connie, yeah, damn it. And then the other one that we could pull is the whole like your bits can't get along thing, which we see with in a kind of roundabout way we see in the Garnet Amethyst fusion, where they get like stuck in it because it's too much. They like lose themselves in the power of it. And then also there's another episode where like there's like conflict within it, basically. So it's either we can either have it be the like there's like a bunch of different directions to take this Darkness prompt in, where it's about like a complete loss of self and going into almost like in my mind this would be like toxic codependent relationship pattern stuff. We could take it in the y'all get separated. Or the idea of, yeah, like this like horrifying loss of agency for the two individuals inside of it. So it's like they turn inward and become lost inside of this like larger self that they exist as. So yeah, I want to start with some gather info stuff and then move on to these other categories. I want to give some time for this Darkness thing to percolate in my mind. Oh god, yeah, the Storm Typhus bringing up the forced fusion thing. Yeah, that all is messed up as well. Hyena Spots, you should definitely watch some Steven Universe. That show is amazing. Yeah, like Sierra Mira says, everyone should do their Steven Universe homework all the time. Um, I'm actually, I think there's like a big chunk of Steven Universe that I haven't been able to watch because I don't have a good way of watching it because I live in Canada. So, Fargonatic, I really like this suggestion of who can best help me with the problem at hand. I think that's super cool. And yeah, like I would love for the darkness prompt to include all of those points of inspiration. Um, and there's probably some evocative thing that we could put in there that would make that happen. So I pretty much want all of these to have to do with people and none of them to have to do with circumstances directly. So I like this one for that reason, right? That it's about practical circumstantial things, right? The problem at hand, but through this lens of interpersonal shit, right? Where it's who can best help me with the problems at hand. Yeah, I gotta just go find that show for free on the internet somewhere. Um, Sometimes I get blocked from watching that stuff though because I'm in Canada, whereas folks in America can watch things, especially to do with like Cartoon Network and stuff. But anyways, gather info. Um, what are they really feeling? I just want to take a quick look at some of the gather info questions. Right, like what are they really feeling is super good. What do they really care about? I like that one too. High Slight Quills. Yeah, Burning Wheel's going to be good. Definitely. I mean, I'm just going to look at more Blaze questions to steal from because this is an obvious starting point. Let's start with the Whisper. What drives them to do this? I think I already gave to another playbook, but it's a fucking awesome question. This is Spider. Not really anything relevant. Yeah, none of these are as interpersonal as I need them to be. So, I mean, they're all really good, well set up for Blades, but yeah. So Sierra Mira brings up a good point about the Unlikely Heroes ones, right? Which are very much in this same vibe where they're all about feelings, for the most part. Yeah, like what is your character really feeling? I should What is your character really feeling? So these are similar, but I want the fusion to kind of have a stronger set, one that like positions them to lead more. Um, and that these all be framed with like how people relate to each other and stuff as well is really important. So how are X and Y connected, I think is a good one. I like this one because this can be both about like people and things and still, right, like connections, relationships between things or people. Yeah, feeling clever. Yeah. I like having a who here question. Who here is something. Is there like a particular emotion that we might look for? Who here is alone? Could be an interesting one. Help us reach out to people. I like this question of, is this relationship stable, actually, quite a bit from Mystic Memoirs. I think that's an interesting one. And I think, yeah, Sierra Mira, yeah, it should be who here feels alone. I was thinking the same thing, and it's nice to hear you echo that thought. Because, yeah, I think that is more correctly delivers what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, I like the idea of like, maybe we'll do it as like, how strong is the relationship between X and Y? This is starting to feel a little bit redundant with this one. Like, how are these connected? But I like something about like assessing relationships. Something that goes a little deeper into that. Who here would hide in the kitchen if they could? That's an oddly specific question, Sierra Mira. I'll just leave this one blank for now. So who can best help me with the problem at hand? What is your character really feeling? What do they really care about? How are X and Y connected? Who here feels alone? I like this one not so much because I care about the information that it gives me, but because it prompts the player to try to get help with things, which I think is really important for this playbook. Sorry, I just need to deal with a... Just trying to organize something with a particular person who is very difficult to organize with. Just herding cats. It's difficult. It's not Adam, no. Alright. Alright. So, for XP triggers, let me just review some of the ones that are going to have overlap. So, teamwork or self-sacrifice for the Guardian. Mystery or ostentatious action for the Enigma. The Outsider has independent action or aggression. The Stranger has knowledge or subtlety. The Time Traveler has prophecy or revelation. The Unlikely Hero has compassion or honesty. What do we want to give to this playbook? So, I think understanding is one. And that covers our empathy, empathize. In terms of what covers embody, that's a little more tricky. Coordination or cooperation make a lot of sense to me. I'm even tempted to put, like, leadership here. I kind of think, yeah, like coordination, I think best sums up this idea. But yeah, that this character is a leader of some kind, like not necessarily a boss people around leader, but a like showing the way kind of leader. So I'm gonna put coordination for now. Yeah, they're not supposed to be leaders in the sense that they're like in charge, but I think that this playbook represents characters who are like confident in a certain way. There's a certain self-assurance that comes with being part of a like established relationship. So it's not like So, for example, in Steven Universe, Garnet is kind of the ostensible leader of the group, but she's not the leader of the group because she's like the commander. She's not like the sergeant, you know? The reason the other characters follow her is that she is like self-assured and like she expresses qualities of a leader so people follow her. She never demands that people like get in line, and overall their relationship is still very equal. Um, right? Like you're not telling people what to do. You're just lighting the way for them, right? Like so that's how I view this. Um, okay, we've been at this for a little bit. I'm gonna take a quick break, um, maybe like 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna come back and keep chipping away at this. We still got to do the darkness prompt, and maybe one more move. I would like to be able to flesh out this non-optional move for them, uh, at the very least, and then move on to core rules stuff. So yeah, hang tight, everyone. We're just gonna take a quick break and then get back into it. So. All right, hello. Let's resume flailing at this design. So, in terms of our non-optional move for the fusion, like it's not enough. It's not enough to just have the color be that, like, oh yeah, you're like a fusion of multiple people or whatever. Um, it's really important that there be mechanics that reflect that. Um, and so, I have to find some ways to reflect being multiple people, being a relationship, right? Like, I'm trying to think of what this might look like. It's a pretty complicated notion. And then we also, further to that, so it's like, one, you're an inherently, like, composite entity, but then also that you are able to fuse with other people. I mean, this could be reflected in, like, making this character. I don't know if I necessarily want to make this character, like, more mechanically powerful all the time than the other characters, unless we give them, like, a significant drawback to account for that. But, like, in the fiction that we're drawing on, like, if we look at Garnet against all the others, like, Garnet is the strongest because she is more than one person inherently, and because in this genre, like, relationships are power. If you are a relationship, you are, like, an embodiment of the very, like, source of power in the fictional world. And so, there's some of that there, certainly. Um, and we've talked about this playbook being one that can kind of, like, lead through action, um, that embodies things for the other characters to aspire to. So a lot of that feels relevant. Um, I'm trying to think of, like, an interesting way to mechanize all of that. Because having it just be flat out like, yeah, you're just stronger than the other playbooks, it's like, okay, cool, well, we're going to just play, like, 4 fusions and wreck Reno all the monsters. Which, like, it sounds boring, and I don't think anyone would actually do that, but, like, why wouldn't you ultimately do that? If this playbook is, like, objectively stronger than the other ones. Um, and so, yeah, there's, like, that tension between wanting to express that power within the character, but not wanting to make them just like strictly better. I don't know what Nova flares are from Masks, because I've never played Masks. But if someone could give me a condensed version in chat, that would be helpful. And so with social links, we could have a move that involves social links, about making this character better at social linking than the others. So they have to invest the time still, but they just get more out of it. Or to give them like a reserve of social links that they have with themselves. So it's just like so as it stands right now, social links like go away at the end of missions. And so they're like a temporary currency that you accumulate and then spend during missions. That's the current format for them. And links are kind of like the magic sauce in the game. The extra super magic sauce. And so as it stands right now, I'm thinking like probably you would spend links to recover stress, remove harm tags, ignore... Well, maybe not remove the harm tags, but like ignore them for the duration of a mission. And then it's how you're going to activate a bunch of transcendent stuff and maybe certain crew moves. So it's like an important currency, and we could just give this character like a continual float of social links. They could just always have like 2 with themselves internally that they can spend, as well as maybe being better at generating them. But that kind of sounds like an optional move to me. So I'm just going to write that in as an optional move. You start each downtime with 2 links within yourself. And maybe a little more move. That's a pretty solid playbook move, I think. So, I mean, okay, so someone described the Nova thing, so it's cool. It's like there's like a high risk thing that you roll and then you get a bunch of power. Feels a little too, like, self-destructive. Because ultimately I feel like the fusion is about stability. And like that the stability is occasionally threatened, but that by and large it's like a functional, solid relationship, and that's the whole point, right? Is to show that relationships are beautiful, powerful things. And then Storm Typhus, referring to the fact that, like, in canon, yeah, like Garnet is more powerful than the others, like physically, and that they, one half of Garnet, I forget what her 2 halves are named. It's like Ruby and Sapphire, I think. Ruby was a soldier who used to fuse with other rubies, right? And they would form they would like Voltron into this giant version of themselves to gain power, and it was like a very normal thing that would happen as a way of being stronger. So like, yeah, that could be part of it, certainly. But if we're going to give them power, it needs to come at a cost, something to balance it out. And I'm not sure what that would be, because I don't want to have it be like, because there's that whole notion of, again, the like stability and strength. I don't feel like in Steven Universe we see Garnet being especially vulnerable, um, as a result of her nature, because that would muddy the message, right? And so, I mean, generally with these non-optional moves, they have a downside, right? So, like, where are some examples of some non-optional ones? So we have the rival thing, which doesn't do a lot mechanically, in and of itself, but ties into a bunch of other stuff. Um, and then, so the stranger has a transforming move where it's, you cannot take the social link, help recovery, and de-stress downtime action. So actually, edit to the game. We got rid of this. This no longer exists. So just, right, it just bars her from taking certain moves, from using certain moves, with a way to ditch this function. So any of the moves like this, by the way, I'm going to finish offline, sometime over this weekend. Try to have these all ready for Monday. Because there are a bunch of gaps where it's just like, insert move here, particularly for this playbook. Right, like a lot of these non-optional things are, kind of more like positioning than anything else, right? The Unlikely Hero has one that is very mechanical, but again is highly limiting. So you cannot have special armor, you cannot transcend. Um, yeah, and with this one, I only established the drawbacks. I did not come up with a good design for like what this gives you or why this is helpful. Um, and we have a way of getting rid of this move eventually, just like how the Stranger has that as well. Stranger has a similar thing where they have a downside that they can get rid of by completing certain, there's probably going to be like fictional circumstances that they need to achieve. Um, so we've had this style of move. We've had kind of like fulcrum things like the fated person timeline thing and the and the outsiders rival move. Um, these are just like a place to store an important trigger that a bunch of stuff revolves around. Um, this one is the first one that's going to be like really swingy, I feel like, where it's going to actually have a bunch of high-powered shit that it does. And it's not going to change. Yeah, I mean, this could be a transforming move. And all of the transforming moves essentially give you like an arc to play. Um, which is like essential to the character type. So maybe it's just that we give them power, but they still have to spend stress to access it. Something like what Hyena Spots is suggesting of you may push yourself to roll an action twice as if you were performing a group action. Seems pretty neat. But it's tricky. Um, oops. Delete this. And there's definitely room for some transcendent moves that are about like fusing with other characters and stuff, which we can get into later. How do we manifest this idea of being a composite character in some kind of mechanic? Because like a lot of it is just going to be flavor, certainly. Um, they've got a bunch of really powerful moves, but giving the playbook powerful moves doesn't really like make it more powerful because anyone can take them as veteran advances, right? So it's not like, and this is the reason for this core move that is not one that can be taken with an advance, because that way no one else gets it, right? It's unlike in Blades, there are a few situations in which we have things that only a given playbook can access. Yeah, like maybe it's as simple as they get an extra dot at character creation. Like I was thinking about that. And yeah, Fargonautic, part of my notion for the playbook is that like you're functionally one character, right? Like you're one player playing one character, though that character might be composed of several people. I don't see it being an issue of like me needing to like talk to myself. I don't want to have like they as a collective will have something to say to the other characters, and like you know, there will be some advice in the book about not just endlessly having scenes where you're alone but you're role playing with yourself. So it's just a waste of everyone's time. So, it's a difficult impasse I find myself at with this design. It could be about constraint too. We could talk about how like if you are separated which doesn't necessarily have to come up much, but it's something that we might play into as a table, having it happen at some point. Um, and so we can include a clause here that talks about that, certainly. Right? These are kind of the two questions for this design. So, Siramira, like, that context will be there. I just don't want it to be like, this like tedious thing where it's always like, both my characters are there. They talk to each other, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't want people to hog screen time. But like, if we look at Garnet as our classic example for this, like most of the time she is just one character. She's one person. Very rarely we look at what it would mean for her to be separated into her constituent people. And when that happens, we play it out. But that only happens when it's important, right? And so, yeah, in terms of like the mechanics of it, I see people doing the whole like, you're at 3 harm when you're separated. Which means that you need help to do anything. Which kind of implies that your two halves are kind of helpless without one another. It's one way to run it. I also saw someone say, oh, like when you are separated, you immediately go into darkness. Feels like a good option. Yeah, and like the thing that makes Garnet interesting is that she's 2 people. Before that, she was kind of this like weird punchy robot, which I love weird punchy robots, don't get me wrong. And that there's kind of a pivot with her character once we've learned her secret. And she like opens up more to everyone else once that's kind of established. Okay. I think this is legit. Immediately fall to darkness. We've got to define what being in darkness. We got to define what this actually does, but I think having this be an additional trigger for it is legit. It essentially gives another way for the MC to like lean on this character, that you're going to have to be resisting consequences that might separate you, because they will be hugely impactful. This clause, I think, is really important to avoid it being kind of codependence. We can say that it's, only if you're separated against your will. You can separate of your own accord, and that's fine. But I mean, maybe y'all are right that this is a little too extreme. Like, it seems reasonable fictionally, but then like to play this, would this actually be interesting or enjoyable? Um, this kind of just gives the GM a far too easy button to push to just be like, yeah, you're going to resist this consequence because otherwise you're fucked. Um, if you are separated against your will, your position is always desperate, or your effect is always limited. And saying that your effect is always limited is similar to just saying like separating you is harm. And this is the other thing, right? Is that like against the fusion, I would use like I would be like level 3 harm, you're separated, could be legit as well, right? Like there are lots of ways that you could kind of theorize attacking the fusion, right? By way of harm or by way of stress, etc. So you could split them as a consequence, and then they're just always in desperate positions. I don't really see a way that is practical to add more like harm spots or more stress or whatever. Like that all feels it doesn't feel compelling to me. But you could do it that you just add like you can take 3 level 2 harms before it turns into level 3 harm. You could even like split level 3 harms, so you have 2. You can go like 2 level 3 harms, 3 level 2 harms, 3 level 1 harms. It's definitely something to consider, and like maybe you expand the stress slider. Be a little bit bigger. I don't know. This one is really tough. So this whole what strength do we gain by being together question still feels important. I mean, this could just be something like, while you are together, um, you get like +1 die to resistance rolls or blah blah blah. Like we could make it some mechanical thing like that. I definitely like the idea of them having like a downtime, like extra downtime. Action per phase because they're split. Stuff like that. Like if we start playing around with this idea of them acting separately, we can start getting some interesting stuff. So this would be similar to the spiders move, calculating, right? And that's quite powerful as well. Yeah, I think Siramira, your point, I take your point to heart that yeah, it's important to give them reasons to do stuff apart as well, potentially. Um, I like the idea of them being split while not transcended. So like in downtime, there's more of a tendency for them to be apart, and then when we go into action and we actually need to transcend, that's when they go together. Boom. Oh, and of course, yeah. Your position is always desperate. You can only transcend together. Right, so if you're separated, you can't go all magical girl. And so here we have, if you are separated against your will, your position is always desperate. If you're separated for any reason at all, you won't be able to transcend. So then what do we gain now? This is the real challenge. It's like, what bonuses do we give the fusion to make this all worthwhile? I think maybe just like giving them big payouts when they're transcendent could be cool. It's like they're much better at doing the like super high end heroic stuff, but they're kind of whatever when they're not doing that. Yeah, I feel like this thing that they are stronger by being together relates to transcendence, right? Because Siramira being insightful, right? Like if we were to direct these questions at Garnet, like what strength does she gain by being together versus, what does she lose by being apart? I feel like we've described pretty well Garnet's position when she's separated. Um, can't really fight while separated, and it's like a huge undermining of their confidence and abilities. Um, and so by being together, what Garnet gains is like fighty power, right? Like in addition to like a bunch of emotional nice stuff from like being in a relationship in general, but also like just direct fighty awesomeness. Um, so maybe the rules for transcendence are a little different when you're the fusion. Okay, I have a thought also. Um, for this playbook, we eliminate the starting stats altogether, and we say, okay, you take 3 pens, a red pen, a blue pen, and a purple pen. One stat is a red, one stat's a blue, one stat's a purple, and you pick them all. The purple one is shared by both your halves. The red is from one half, the blue is from another. When you're fused, you get them all. When you're separated, they each get one, or they each have 2 stats. The one they share, they each have 1 dot in, and the one they don't. And that every time you assign stats, you have to divide them in that pattern. It's very gimmicky, but I think it's really cute because it involves colored pencils. So that's what we're going to do. Whoops. I'm going to be on this layer. Boop, boop. Okay, it's going to be very time consuming to describe in text, but I think it's the cutest shit ever. So yeah, every third stat is for both of them. Or just like, it's not necessarily every third dot, because what it would be is together they make a whole person who has all of the stats, but separated, they have some that are barred from them. And so essentially anything you have 0 in you don't worry about, but anything you have 1 in you have to assign to one or the other of them, and then if they both have the same number of stats assigned to both of them, then they get 1 to share. So they still advance at the same rate as other playbooks, but what happens is that the 2 of them together advance as one character would. The 2 of them apart advance at half that rate. Or like 75% of that rate, essentially. So essentially this way we know what to roll when they're acting separately, because they each have a different stat pool. Those stat pools combine to form the complete character. And so essentially the 9 stats are divided to, if you were to unlock all of them, if you had 1 dot in everything, one character would have 3 of the 9 abilities, the other character would have 3 different of the 9 abilities, and then they would have 3 of the 9 abilities that they both shared, for a total of only 6 stats each, instead of the total of 9 each that all the other players get. So right, so this is the idea with this, that we define what each of them is bringing to the table. And so when they are not fused, or when they are not transcended, they are not fused. So this is all getting a little bit complicated. Lay it on me, Sith Master. What is your super complicated aesthetic design suggestion? Because, yeah, the shorthand that I was thinking is maybe have, like, every circle divided in half. And you shade one side if it's for one character and one side if it's for the other, or, like, top and bottom. And then once they're shared, you shade both sides. So, to be clear, this is only while separated against your will. This is like a further penalty. This is if you're like captured, separated by some circumstances, that kind of thing. Yeah, and then at that point, we're looking at a design where you're two people. So you can't be fused polyamorously. You can only be two people who then also date a third person or fourth person, etc. Systmaster, the resist dots for each section are the ones on the left. They're just the first point for each action. So there's no way of separating them, unfortunately. So I don't think or I misunderstand your suggestion. Yeah, I think just splitting the dots in half is a good way to make this work. And so if I go onto this layer and I do a and of course it doesn't make sense to split the transcendent dots. Derp. Because the transcendent dots could never be shared. Or could never not be shared, because you're transformed, so they always combine. So just a little bit of Photoshop magic here, and we'll be on our way. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. I mean, we may decide that this is needlessly complicated and cut it, but for now I think it's kind of fun. So you would never roll half a circle. It's just that, oh no, because yeah, splitting them in half doesn't make sense. I'm being silly because like the color coding solution. Well, okay, so this lets you do it two ways. You can either color code, in which case you're just filling in whole circles, or you can decide that like upper half represents one character, lower half represents another character, and then you fill in accordingly. Just for the sake of people who are colorblind or like who only have a pencil, there's an option. So yeah, that's all. So, for example, let's just mock this up so I can be like, boom, or well here. So yeah, if we stick with what our expected default was, we've got a dot in embody, one half has a dot in empathize, and maybe they both have a dot in like forgive. All right, so this is what it would look like. So like while combined, you're just 1, 1, and 1. But while separated, whoever the top half is only has 1 forgive, 1 embody, and the bottom half has 1 forgive, 1 empathize. The two of them together have forgive, embody, and empathize. Make sense? Easy peasy. Okay, we'll give it a try. We'll see how people like it. I have a feeling it's going to be excessively complicated, but whatever. Ideally, I would prefer to color code, in which case we're just doing something like there's a red one, and there's a blue one. Oops, that's too purple. There's a blue one, and then there's a purple one that they both share. I mean, the thing is, Ringsong, like, these moves are all optional. And also, like, it doesn't have to literally be that you're bigger. It's just your functional scale increases. So it's equivalent to, like, not to be trifled with, essentially. Right? Like, I think you're just imagining this of being only in its, like, literal expression. But this could just be, like, you fight at a larger scale. Yeah, you could do it with different shapes and stuff as well. I guess the splitting of the dots actually is just... I'd rather not split the dots. I would rather just get people to do it themselves. Damn it. So yeah, because you can use shapes, you can use fucking colors, whatever. So, changes to transcendence for fusion. So they get more out of being transcended. What does that look like? So everyone's stats normally increase while transcended. So we could increase the numbers on those. And when we have some playbook moves around transcendence here, which are pretty straightforward and mechanical, right? Like, while transcendent, each character gets +1 defy, forgive, and empathize. While transcendent, each character gets +1 die to all resistant rolls. So everyone's already like quite strong when transcended, potentially. Okay, I think I'm all caught up on chat. I'm sorry. Like, I do my best to stay on top of it, but I'm also like deep in my own headspace. during all of this, so I don't always do the best job of following chat, and I do apologize if I've missed anything. So anyways, need to think of like what this means. I'm leery of making it just stats. I don't know. But some kind of bonus when they transcend would be nice. So basically, what are the resources we have access to? So they could get an extra armor slot, because armor is only available when you're transcended. Special armor is always available. But they could have 2 armor slots, so they could essentially always have heavy armor. Stuff like that actually seems good. I'm into stuff like that. So essentially they always have heavy armor. So yeah, Ratsuka, the fusion, I think I understand your question to be like, what are our touchstones, our media touchstones for this character? The fusion is Garnet from Steven Universe. So, you have separate action ratings for your I think I can eliminate this clause. You can only transcend by fusing together. There we go. That makes it super clear. What I was trying to say earlier, but does it in one sentence, one clean sentence. You have separate action ratings for your 2 selves. A different color / shape. This whole thing is so long-winded to describe that it's like putting it on the sheet feels really clumsy. Yes, Mira, I'll try to give at least like a general fleshing out of the parts of Blades that come into this game. It's gonna be a little tricky because I obviously can't just like copy and paste Blades, because then I'm just like straight up stealing John's work and giving it away for free to people. So I'll figure that out. But that's something I'm gonna be doing over the weekend, is actually like play procedure and like how the rules work for the playtest package. That'll definitely be there. For now, I'm just doing the playbooks on these design streams, because, you know, like if you're really interested in seeing how blades work, you like it is there for you to go check out. And also, like, you can watch people play it online or all this other stuff. There are lots of ways for folks to do their homework on that that I don't want to spend a bunch of time expounding on it here. And then when the playbook package comes out, it's also going to lay everything out, so it won't be so mysterious. But I'll make sure to include all of that for folks like you who have not played Blades. I understand that that's probably a decent portion of the population that'll be playing it, so. Also share how to describe this. So they may not share action ratings. No, that's not really what I said. They may only share every other action rating. God, describing this clearly in text is so difficult. Because it's not every third action, it's every second for them, potentially, right? Because, like, I unlock one for myself, my partner unlocks one for themselves, and then we each unlock one together, and then so you're actually alternating in terms of, like, if we are identifying it as being from the perspective of each self. I mean, we could even have it just be that there's like a 50-50 split and they have no overlap. But I like the idea of them having something in common, the two selves. It just takes so long to write. I'm trying to keep it condensed. So I'm trying to think of like the way to make the most like shorthand version of it possible. I mean, I have to pay homage. Record each with a different color / shape. They share all their action ratings while fused. This should actually be a separate clause if I want to explain this. So, record each with a different color / shape. You have separate action ratings for your two cells. Record each with a different color / shape. They share one starting action rating. Mark it with a third color / shape. cut and paste that. I just cut it. While fused, yourselves share all action ratings. So you start with 3 with 1 dot in 3 action ratings. You have separate action ratings for each of your 2 cells. Record each with a different color/shape. They share one starting action rating. Mark it with a 3rd color/shape. While fused, your selves share all action ratings. Boosh. This needs to be in 10 point in order for this all to fit. This all needs to be in 10 point. Yeah, I'll zoom back in for y'all. So, I feel like that gives us all the information we really care to have. With one exception. So new action ratings are assigned to yourselves accordingly. And yourselves cannot exceed each other. Wow, I butchered that word. Each other by more than 1 dot. Do not exceed each other's total by more than 1 dot. Total action rating. More than 1 dot. Cool. Defining separated. That's a fair point. So okay, new action ratings are assigned to one of these categories. They cannot exceed each other's total action ratings by more than 1 dot. There we go. So now, by saying categories, this covers this whole 3 different color, or are assigned to one color/shape. They cannot exceed each other's total action ratings by more than 1 dot. So essentially this says, it changes the ordering a little bit, because originally I envisioned it as like they each need to get one separately before they can get one together, but now it could be that they could get one together, which would be the most efficient way, blah, blah, blah. But basically it says that they can never, the distribution can never be greater than 1 different. So if one of your halves has 2 points, the other one only has 1 assigned, this one can't go up to 3 points, nor can your shared action ratings go up to more than 2. Yeah, I think this is clear that each action yeah, because the rating itself is assigned to one color/shape, and they cannot exceed each other's total action ratings by more than 1 dot. And then that they share 1 starting action rating. Also, we state here that you start with 1 dot in 3 action ratings. I think this is all pretty clear. We'll let testing determine whether or not this is true. And this kind of is separated logically into some stuff around transcendence and fusing, and then the whole like action rating thing is in this other paragraph. Okay. Let's move on for now. I'll have to continually rework that for a long time, I'm sure. Storm Typhus, I'm doing a playtest session on Monday on Distracted Elf's channel at 5 p.m. Pacific, and I'm going to also distribute the playtest package at that point. So yeah, you can get your hands on it on Monday when it's all ready to go. All right. Darkness. So, oops. So darkness really has 2 things we need to worry about. 3 things. So, an emotional statement, an action prompt, and an escape clause. And typically the formatting is that these 2 are in 1 paragraph, and then this is another one. And then like rules fallout being the 3rd one. Or the potential 4th one for some playbooks. So, yeah, we are doing darkness now. Let's get right into it. So, we had a few kind of candidates for what this might look like previously. Given what we have established now, I'm not really liking the forced separation one. But it's still certainly on the table. It's just really, really severe. That is like the most severe thing that we could do, because then they wouldn't be able to transcend, etc. We could do a like, and I guess there was like a 5th option, which was like that we make it open enough that any of those things could happen, but I think there's definitely an option that's like a subsuming and loss of self. Um, I think there's a like being trapped slash unwilling to leave fusion in a form of like power addiction kind of thing. Um, and yeah, there are like, if we look at Steven Universe, there are like a bunch of examples of fusion going wrong. There's the Garnet Amethyst fusion where they just like, that's the kind of the like power addiction one. And there's the Stevani fusion where they like can't separate anymore, or they start like getting all weird about it. And yeah, like Fergonotic is suggesting this idea of like an us against the world extremist kind of mindset. Or yeah, Sarah Mira, why do we need friends when we have each other? Right, like the isolationist codependent grossness. Yeah, like right now I'm kind of leaning towards the like deep codependence. Because I think that like resonates most with me as a, if I think about like dark places that couples go, that's one, certainly. So right now I'm leaning towards like deep dark codependence. As my emotional statement. So that's the vibe. What does this mean for the action prompt? This prompt could be like, don't do teamwork, don't blah blah blah, like cut self off from teamwork slash support. Try to go it, and put this in quotes, alone, because you know you're not ever alone, but this is definitely one option. It's not super compelling. But I can see how these two at least tie together. Right? Where it's like, we only need each other. We don't need you guys. We don't need friends. Right? That all connects. This does feel kind of samey with the Guardian and Outsider playbooks. Although the motivation is very different, a lot of what it tells you to do is still very similar. Um, so it'd be nice if it was something else. It's just that there are very few like self-destructive behaviors that I can actually prescribe to players safely. Um, because ultimately this is like it can't be too counterproductive. Like we have to take the darkest self lesson to heart, right? That there's nothing I can do to make my players do this. The best I can do is reward them with XP for doing it. Yeah, we could go bossy instead of leading from the front. This could turn into leading from the back. So maybe this whole, like, if we go still with this deep dark codependence vibe, right? Then we're like, oh yeah, well we're all that matters, so everyone else should go risk themselves. Don't risk us. We're too important. And so this goes from lead from the front to lead from the back. So you start bossing people around. This could be an option. I don't know what tools we give the players in order to actually, for them to actually pursue that. I mean, but I hope that my meaning is clear, Matthias, when I say, there are a few self-destructive player behaviors that I can prescribe to players safely. Because, like, it has to be something that they would want to do still. The cost cannot be so great that it's not worth doing. Is the issue with these darkness prompts, right? It has to be a bad thing that is not so bad that they won't do it. So I kind of like this, like acting all superior, because this is also a thing that couples do, right? Of like, oh, well, we've made it, we've got the thing, we've got all this like loving perfect thing. Fuck all you people who don't have that. There's room for that to a like haughty, superior, self-superior kind of vibe to come through. Right, and then escape. We could start from the back and work our way forward, right? How do we envision the fusion escaping? This action prompt I really don't have strong ideas about yet. But how could we envision pulling them out of these kind of like lost in themselves situations? What kinds of things make sense here? I think this involves like separating them in a healthy way. Um, like giving them reasons to be apart. I mean, the thing about letting people decide their own darkness is that most players are cowards, um, and are too interested in the safety of their characters. This is like a weird thing to ask someone to do because they will I think, generally not go far enough. And I mean, maybe everyone tuning in right now would go far enough because y'all are perfect angels, but by and large, I do not trust players to. Right, like I stand by this. Most players are cowards because they have been brought up by all the wrong games, right? Like D&D doesn't teach you to be brave, and that's most people's role playing game touchstone is D&D. That's what they came up on, right? Like, and it teaches you to like protect your little mechanical nugget, right? Um, and I think like most people who have played D&D will have seen that behavior. Um, like, nah, no, this has to be. I mean, yeah, these are super hard to design because they have to be pretty shitty, but they can't be so shitty that no one will ever play into them at all. I have to reward people enough for playing into them to tempt them into doing it, and make it evocative enough that it will inspire the right kinds of play. The hardest thing to design or to write are these darkness prompts. They're very, very difficult. Um, and I mean, Blades in the Dark, this game that we're basing our game on, is one that is about never hedging your bets and about just diving into shit. And we want to keep that spirit alive as much as possible, um, and support it with our rules. Um, but I don't know if the player base is all they're all there yet. The game is best enjoyed that way, but I think people still don't necessarily play into it. So there's definitely like in the one day a full rulebook version of this game, I will have just as much time dedicated to that topic as John does in the Blades in the Dark book, where it's I think his description of it is "Don't be a weasel." Let me find this passage because it is excellent and I think it is very relevant in this moment. I will just search the PDF for weasel. Yeah, there is a section headed with "Don't be a weasel." As a player, you have the privilege of choosing which action to roll, but with this privilege comes a responsibility. Don't choose the action that matches. Choose the action that matches what your character is doing, not simply the dice pool you would like to roll. And then he has a section about take responsibility. You are the co-author of the game. If you want shortcoming and flaws to be part of the ongoing story, show your own character's failure to make good decisions. If you want the world of Duskwall to be deadly, accept deadly harm when it's time for your character to die. In Blades, every participant is responsible for the tone, style, and themes of the game, not just the GM. As a player, you have an expressive role to play at the table, not just a tactical one. Think about what you have to say as a co-author of the ongoing fiction, and then use your character to say it. Yeah, he's got a bunch of really good advice in here. Um, so yeah, there's like a whole section on like best practices for players. That is quite well written and quite evocative. Um, and I fully plan to have similar stuff. And I mean, I have player agenda up here in the corner just to try to encourage people to be good and play the game correctly. Yeah, Sierra, I know the episode you're referring to, and I can't fucking remember how it concludes either. Um, I'm also actually running out of time, so I'm gonna have to put things on hold. I didn't get through this playbook as quickly as I had hoped, but it's not surprising to me because this one is complicated. yeah, this darkness prompt is just so such a delicate thing because you don't want it to like completely unravel and unmake the character, but it does need to prompt a an emotional arc of change of some kind, but it's not like change into being a different playbook or something. It's just be yourself, but some new facet of yourself that we haven't seen before. Um, it's to. I'm gonna watch that episode, Sierra Mira, for sure, because it. I'm sure it contains all the inspiration I need to actually write this. Um, but this one I'm feeling very on the fence about. What's up, kobolds? Y'all miss me ranting about how all players of role playing games are cowards. You missed some very good rants. Um, I'm just wrapping up my work on the fusion. So I think I'm gonna spend a little bit of time in my little word editor, my little word pad here, getting my notes from my little purple handbook up to speed. And then I think I'm gonna wrap up for the day. But for those of you who are fans of Elf's channel, we are going to be playtesting my game on Monday. I'm sure she's already explained this before sending everyone over. So, whatever. So the things I need to update in here are okay. So I've got a couple. Sorry, I'm gonna move my microphone. Pardon the noise. Okay, so I've got a few things to update. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Bloop, 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 bloop. So, under game structure. Is there anything I need to add to Eclipse? So when you reach maximum stress, you're in Eclipse, blah, blah, blah. In darkness, blah, blah, blah. Let's just say clear, not deer, right? Yeah, okay, good. I think I just need to add a section for virtue, which we'll do. So, if a crit is rolled, recover. Yeah, it's roll a resistance of your choice and recover stress equal to the result. So you recover 1 to 6 stress. If Moe was rolled, each other player recovers half rounded down. Half your roll. Stress equal to half your roll rounded down. If Tsundere was rolled, each player gets. So yeah, Sierra Mira, all the VODs from the playtest will be on YouTube. I think they're all going to be on Elf's YouTube, although I'm going to talk about maybe getting them on mine with her. I'll see what she thinks about that. And then her YouTube channel is just Distracted Elf. Her branding is very consistent. And the first playtest is there's a VOD of it on my YouTube, which you can find through my Twitter at Comedian Crow. Although the game is completely different from what it was like during that one. But I'll be getting that crew together to continue playtesting over the coming months. And then all the design VODs for this are also on my YouTube. Yeah, I think Elf that it should be pretty easy to get it on my channel as well. I'm sure there are ways. Okay. So if Tsundere was rolled, each character gets +1 die to their next action roll. If Kudere was rolled, each player refreshes their armor and special armor. Maybe this one is actually each player gets 1 recovery. Yeah. Each other player rolls recovery. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Covers based on your roll. So essentially, all this bullshit with Eclipse. Once your stress is maxed out, you're on the precipice, you're rolling every time you take stress. On a 6, you just hold on, you're fine, whatever. On a 4 to 5, someone else can push themselves to keep you in the game. Otherwise, you fall. And on a 1 to 3, you fall to darkness. When you fall to darkness, you have to play into your darkness prompt. It's all this stuff in the second clause here. But if you crit, you choose 1 resistance to roll. So either Moe, Tsundere, or Kudere, based on which one you choose to. So sorry. I'll roll back. So you roll one of these. You recover stress equal to the result. And then depending on which one you rolled, you get different benefits for the crew at large. And it's each other player. So everyone else gets to do a cool thing. You get fancy bonuses. We'll see if this is overpowered, but I think it's neat. All right, so this is all solid now. It matches my notes, so that's good. Darkness, I did a small update to today just to clarify some interactions with the obligation phase. Obligation we're still happy with. Downtime. Social link, help a friend recover, investigate the darkness, work on a long-term project. So, I don't have a section discussing social links. So that's a mechanic I need to flesh out. Promises is another one. I don't have transcendence fleshed out yet. There's like a bunch of categories that need to be figured out. As well as clarification for all the downtime moves. So the Eclipse crit things. For Moe, it's stress recovery. For Tsundere, it is they essentially take your whatever you roll for that, and they use it as if you had just rolled the help a friend recover action. So if they have, they have their healing clock, and this is taken pretty directly from Blades. The recovery functions the same way, but for those who haven't seen that, I'll explain. So the way that recovery works in Blades is that you have your harms here. So you can have like 1 level 1 harm, 2 level 2 harms, for example. Let's say that's what we have. When you fill your recovery clock, if we have 2 level 2 harms and a level 1 harm, if we completed a recovery clock, we would migrate everything down 1 level. So our level 1 harm would go away, and then we would have 2 level 1 harms. Simple enough, right? So in this example, then, let's say that I still have some leftover recovery on my clock here, but I have recently suffered level 3 harm during the mission. Maybe I got like these 2 harm during the mission. I had one that was left over from previous stuff, and I was trying to recover it, but couldn't quite. My companion rolls Tsundere. When they crit their Eclipse roll, they roll, let's say they roll a 4. So they clear 4 stress, and then because they rolled Tsundere, as a result of their roll, everyone applies a recovery with a roll of 4, which is 2 pips on the recovery track, which for me would then mean that I get to recover, and all my harm bumps down 1 level. So we go from having a level 3 harm to a level 2 harm and a level 1 harm. My level 1 harm that I had previously goes away. My level 2 harm is bumped down to level 1. That's how that would play out. Normally, recovery is a downtime action, and you get between 1 and 3 pips. So. Yeah, whereas with Moe, if say I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stress filled in so far, and my friend rolled a 4 on Moe, then I would, they would recover 4, I would recover 2. If they rolled a 3, I would only recover 1, because it's rounded down. And then the Kudere option refreshes armor, so if I had already spent my armor, so let's say in this example, I'm real fucked up, right? I could use any of these results. If they choose the Kudere one, I refresh my armor. So if I had used all of my armor, I would get it all back. The reason I don't feel the need to make a roll on that one is that not everyone's going to have special armor. Everyone has at most 1 armor except for the Fusion who has 2. And they may or may not have used it, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like it's fine to just make it refresh all armor. Maybe we'll discover down the line that one is more powerful than the other. Super good, super unlikely, because to crit your Eclipse roll, you have to get a crit on your lowest resist, which for many characters will be either 0 or 1, which makes the crit impossible. So and the Tsundere effect being useful depends on if people have any leftover pips in their recovery clock, all that kind of stuff as well. So all this to say, it's not a very likely thing. It can come up, and it's very powerful when it does, but it's very, very unlikely. Because the circumstances that determine it are pretty rare. Now, I think the Outsider has a move about getting a bonus die to Eclipse rolls. I thought I had given them one. It was in plan to do so, certainly. Because I want them to be the edgy one who can pull that shit off. Or maybe the unlikely hero should have it. Yeah, I feel like it should live in either the unlikely hero or maybe Guardian? I don't know. There's room for a move like that where you get extra dice to make that seem more likely to make that more likely to happen for specific playbooks. But yeah, it's totally the inspiration for that whole mechanic is actually Darkest Dungeon, right? When characters break and they might go virtuous, but more than likely they're just going to go all shitty. So you have that little nugget that can happen where if you crit, it's super huge, but the most likely results are that you will not. I'm not sure what the odds are of this. So, assuming the crit is even possible, so say you're rolling 2 dice, it's a 1 in 36 or whatever. There's one result, which gives you that. There are 2 results, not including this one, that give you a 6, right? Or, well, not 2, sorry, it's a 6 and a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's a bunch of results that can give you a 6. But the vast majority of them are going to be this, obviously. Because this is 12 results out of all the possible results, which are more than 36, I think. But anyways, or maybe they're 36, but that seems too good. It's 1 in 6. Anyways, I don't know exactly how probability works because I'm bad at math, but the vast majority of results are not that you get this awesome thing, because all of these still don't include it. There's exactly 1 roll that you can make on 2 dice that will get you there, and the more dice you roll, the better, obviously. But I think it's rad. We'll see. I might need to make this more likely to happen. Or maybe the move that we can do is that rather than getting this effect on a crit, you get it on a 6 or something. Or have some other way of accessing this effect. I don't know. We'll see. Is this all of my categories now? This is the roundup of shit that still needs to get done. But I think that's everything. Promises, Transcendence, links. This is how social links work, and then also defining the social link action, which I have some notes about the social link action. And then I have a bunch of promise prompts figured out as well. Okay, cool. So this is essentially my homework, is to finish this stuff off, because I gotta wrap up the stream. But thank you everyone for tuning in. The next big Girl by Moonlight thing is going to be the playtest on Monday on Distracted Elf's channel. So I invite you all to tune into that, or to check out the VODs for it, which will be posted at the very least to her YouTube channel, and very likely to mine as well. And then from there, I'm going to make the playtest package available to everyone. So if you want to try out my game, you're welcome to do so. I ask that if you are going to try it, please give me notes. Please. Please, please, please. I don't want to give you this unless you're going to give me notes, is how I feel about it. And so I think what that might look like is I will send it out to anyone on the first release. Anyone that asks can have a playtest copy. But then in order to get updates, you got to send me notes, basically. So I will keep track. I will have a spreadsheet of everyone I have sent it to. And yeah, those that send me notes will get rules updates. And those that do not, I'm not going to send you updates. Play the game in its state and send me notes. And then you can keep playing the game. That's the deal. I'm being a jerk about it, but whatever. Thank you all for tuning in. Please follow me on Twitter at CommutingCrow if you are interested in this game or in any of my other projects, which include being on a bunch of different roleplay shows, both on Roll20's channel, on Distracted Elf's channel, and at some uncertain future date, we will be resuming a show on Misclicks. So you can find me in those places, and hopefully other places soon as well. So catch you all on Monday, hopefully.